Well, this will be fun. These are one of my funnest. Is that a real word? You're in education. Funnest is a real word. Um, Dr. Phillips, if I may, welcome to the Leaders Who Care series.
Thank you. So happy to be joining you.
Well, I'm excited to hear the real story. I heard Sarah's. Now I don't want to hear the real story of things going on and whatnot. But let's start with getting to know you a little bit better, an introduction. And I always have to I have to do this more for men, mind you, an asterisk. I don't want to start with what you're doing. I want to start a little bit learning about who you are. And if I may call you Daniela after the
Please.
doctor, great. And you can call me Mark. Who would have thought? Um, can you share a little bit about where you're from originally, where you are now? Whatever you feel comfortable talking about family, which would be great. Maybe something you've never told anybody that you want to reveal to the world now. That always comes up with some interesting anecdotes. But share a little bit about who Daniela is.
Yeah, happy to. And I have to say, I'm inspired by your cap, by your hat, to start by saying that I grew up in a small town in Canada, Dundas, Ontario, which is a suburb of Hamilton, which is a suburb of Toronto.
Exactly. Dundas is a cool
So
place.
I'm impressed already that anyone has heard of Dundas. It was a great place to grow up, um, with multiple ice hockey rinks because that's kind of the center of what you do after school and on weekends and in summers and winters, obviously. But what I loved about it is that it's small town and formed a lot of my values and connection, the importance of connection, the importance of community, the importance of being a giving and contributing member of community. And so when my family moved to the big United States and specifically New York, it was a bit of a culture shock, but also incredibly exciting to be part of a really richly diverse, much larger community. So kind of added to values of, wow, the importance actually of heterogeneity and diversity and kind of weaving that in. So geographically has really influenced my growing up and my values, I'd say.
I bet I can kind of relate in a little bit. I went from Montreal to Winnipeg, the other direction, and might as well go to a colder city, but might be a cold city, but the people are amazingly warm in Winnipeg as well. And I got even more involved in hockey there, but that's another story I talk about. So, when you moved to the States, did you have brothers, sisters along there?
I'm in the middle of two brothers who were very into ice hockey back then. I was a figure skater. And so growing up as a hockey family, being part of our daily lives was really important. I remember it was a little disappointing when we moved to New York State, to Westchester County, where after school people didn't run to play street hockey and they didn't run to go to the ice rink. There was still a group that did, but it wasn't as universal as as it had been growing up.
You didn't transform into a Rangers or Islanders fan, did you?
For a while, I still held on to kind of Canadian allegiance and loyalty. So I remember following Canadian teams for a while and then kind of morphed and, fast forward college and becoming a mom and my kids playing soccer and not really hockey. So yeah, didn't really keep up with the hockey teams, but it looks like you are, Mark. So where's your allegiance at this point?
My allegiance is heart and soul is Montreal, but I've been with the Florida Panthers since even when we were bidding for a team, and so I've been involved with that team for a long time. So we're big Florida Panthers fans as well. I
Oh,
hope that the Panthers and the Canadians never get into the Stanley Cup final together, but that would be a no win and no lose scenario.
I
Um,
hear you.
so it keeps me happy there, and it's grown. They said hockey could never be played in sunny states like California and Florida and Vegas and whatnot, but there's a lot of cups that are in those towns in
It's
the states.
unbelievable. I have to admit, being a bit of a hockey snob, in like, there's no way it could really take off in the South, and here we are.
Well, I had a note that we won't go too much into it. I've just been last several months in Saudi Arabia talking about, aside from business, ice hockey there, and they want to do more stuff
Wow.
there. So that would be fascinating also. Um, why did your family move to the States, by the way?
Yeah, so at the time, I didn't really I mean, I was, devastated to leave my friends and neighbors and campmates, but didn't really probe the adult reasons or professional reasons for it. But now I understand better that my dad, a physician coming out of the UK, coming out of London, was really struggling with getting the Canadian boards and had done his residency and part of, fellowship in the United States, and it just was an easier transition. And so livelihood became kind of the reason. At the time, I just thought it was like punishment, to like cruelty to children.
Yeah,
But
well, it's hard. It's hard as a kid, but kids are also resilient, right? And they get through it. So, what were you like as a kid with in the middle of two guys?
yeah, definitely a tomboy. My nickname was Danny. My brothers are Dan. So definitely um, raised in that way. And it was a small town. Like, I mean, you know Dundas, so there's blink and you've passed it.
Right.
But our street, Robin Hood Drive, was like cars were anathema. Like the cars would have to wait until the street hockey game was over or at a place where it could stap. So it
I
was
love
a
that.
kid-friendly, sport-friendly community.
And when you moved, so about how old were you when you went to when you came to the States?
Starting high school.
Okay, well, that's a pretty important time in life too. But it's
Yeah,
better than moving when you're a junior or senior in high school.
absolutely. Absolutely true. Yes. And, I shouldn't contrast it. Like the high school I attended, public high school in New York State, great school, prepared me incredibly well for college, university. And as I mentioned, like just a whole lot more diversity, which was an important change for me to see and be a part of.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that because when I grew up in Montreal, they talked about it, but we didn't really talk about we need diversity. It was more of a, oh, you're a Greek family. I'd like to try your food. That must be cool, or this or that, or whatever. It was more of embracing it without making it a requirement type of thing. So
Yep.
you probably saw that since Dundas was small, more when you came to New York area.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. And I don't, what you're describing in terms of the culinary contributions of different groups and nationalities and ethnicities, like don't discount that. That's huge too.
Oh, absolutely, and it's fun at the same time
Yeah,
to taste all that stuff.
positive. Yeah.
When did you find that you were influenced, if you will, to get into education?
Yeah. Really early on in high school, I was teaching, I was the assistant in the Sunday school program. I had been, babysitting and tutoring all through high school, all through college. And I was fortunate enough at Princeton University, they don't have pre-professional schools, no business school, no medical school, anything like that, but they did have a very small teacher preparation program to encourage Princeton graduates to make their way into public education. And so while my major was something entirely different, it was international affairs, and I was able to do research on the Camp David Accords in Egypt and Israel and studying Arabic and Hebrew, like a completely different interests, but academic interests, but I was also supported in my journey to become a public school teacher, which was absolutely my goal.
Yeah, we talk about influencers a lot, and I had a grade seven teacher, Mr. Hershey, that was a major influencer. And one of my favorite movies is Mr. Holland's Opus. Um,
Absolutely.
I got to admit publicly, even though I've seen it a million times, I still have some tears at the end of that movie.
As you should. I love that movie. Yes. And teachers are, I mean, there are, other than, parents who are really our primary teachers, but beyond parents, teachers are, our caregivers, our nurturers, our teachers, our instructors, our coaches, our everything.
Everything. I mean, he did something. He did a lot of things. He did something you'd never be allowed to do today. He actually gave us lifts home from school in his car and everything. And but no one ever thought it was, and it wasn't anything. It was just a nice guy and
Yeah.
stuff, which was amazing. So I understand you were a single mom,
Yep.
and that's not easy. How did you
Yeah.
combine? I don't know when you had the kids, but how did you combine working on a Camp David stuff like that? And I lost a lot of my Hebrew, by the way. But is it at mediberet ivrit or at mediberet ivrit?
So because I'm female, at medaberet ivrit,
Right.
can't, I mean, not well, uh, but proud of that heritage and influence, and certainly in terms of values and raising kids. To answer your question quickly about single parenthood, it was not something that I ever aspired or envisioned for
Right.
myself. But certain circumstances, happened, and I knew that I absolutely was committed to being a mom, raising more than a child, if possible. And so, with a lot of family support, my parents, so my kids' grandparents, and my siblings and sisters-in-law and others, like I really did kind of make sure that I had a buffer of a whole village around me helping to raise three children, adults now.
And was that before you became a public teacher or during or what?
I was already, so I've had quite a few years in public education. I'm actually retired from public education now after 30 years. So I went a fairly traditional route of being a teacher for a certain number of years, assistant principal, principal of a school in the Bronx for a certain number of years, superintendent in New York City of 12, 13,000 students. And so while I was a principal, is when I had two of my children, and then as a superintendent, I had my third.
So this is a question I know the answer to, but wasn't all those kids enough?
Yeah, my work kids were far easier than my own. It's a different relationship. Um,
I know.
I, So I there's never enough, and I love being working with, being surrounded by, and just knowing that I have a hand and influence in the future of youth and future generations. So
Yeah, I've coached a lot of kids in hockey and I've learned a ton
yeah.
from sports in so many different ways. And even when I was single and coaching, before even married, people would say, well, you don't have a kid on the team. Why are you coaching? And
Mm.
because they didn't understand, you have to have that. And I loved it. And obviously that was kind of a little bit of a sarcastic question. Why would you have kids if you have all those
Yeah,
kids? But it really does become, and I'd love to hear your emotions and that, your feelings that it really does become almost as close as your own kid relationship with many of the kids that you coach or teach.
some cases for sure. Yeah. I mean, the level of like intimacy, the knowledge that you have, what's shared is an incredibly high threshold of like trust and responsibility. So yeah, that is like, the Latin expression in loco parentis, like you really are acting as parents for the period of time that children are in your care.
Yeah, and it's so fulfilling. I've had kids come that I've coached, and I've had executives that I work with and whatnot that talk to me about experiences they've had with a teacher or a coach, that their whole foundation of confidence was
Yeah.
built on maybe one thing that the teacher or coach did. Put them on the field or on the ice in one critical moment of a game, or told them. And I always love this about teachers. They would say, "You, you are the best class I have ever had in our lifetime." And we're all saying, "Really?" She probably says that to everybody, but we still believe it when she
Yeah.
said it, which is
Yeah.
fascinating to me.
What you're describing, though, Mark, I love speaking with coaches, athletic coaches especially, because like when you ask a child, an adult, who has been your biggest influence? I mean, hopefully there's, family is or parents are in there somewhere. But almost always within the mix are coaches. And there's just like it's such an important teaching relationship, and support and pushing, and that's amazing to me that are you still coaching?
Not right now, although, but
Okay.
I'm speaking to a lot of young people,
Yeah.
and I'm being inspired by what a lot of young people, young leaders who care, are
Yeah.
doing right now, and talking a lot of leadership scenarios, which I find comes from sports very much, comes from sports that we learn like all the time. And the one thing I find fascinating about coaching and teaching is the really great ones realize you're not going to get to see maybe the impact you've made on so many. So you just got to really feel it and know it and be inspired, by it. And I know there's one young lady probably hanging in the wings there that probably could have something to say with that. Are you still there, Miss Phillips?
I am here.
Oh, hello. Welcome. So speaking of inspiring what we thought was going to be future leaders who care, we have found out that Sarah and others are present future leaders who care. So share with us what it was like growing up together, you guys.
It was so sweet. I mean, this is my best friend and my mom all in one. So I had the best
All in
childhood.
one nice package with a bow on
I
it.
know, I know. Seriously. I mean, it was such a blessing to get to have the best role model and know that I was always supported and there's always challenged to be the best version of myself, and that's how I grew up. Like that was the value system. You go to so many other things from like Jewish values to just seeing someone have such an incredible career while raising three kids. I mean, I won the lottery.
And she didn't make you get out there on skates or figure skates and work it.
Actually, I was a figure skater, not so talented. Definitely not as good as my mom, but I did a little bit. I did a little bit.
So one of the crazy things about Sarah is she is a hardcore athlete. Like the person sitting next to me just ran a New York marathon yesterday. And I am whenever I would go to her soccer games or my son's soccer or ice hockey games, I love the concept of a tie. I love give partial credit for effort for teams that like compete well and have good sportsmanship. I have a harder time with like that killer instinct of athletes, and my kids have that. So
Where'd that come from?
I don't know. Great coaches, obviously.
Well, I don't know if I shared this with you, Sarah. There was a coach once for my youngest son when he was about 11 or 12, and I heard him yelling in the dressing room, "Do you guys want to win or do you want to have fun? Pick." And I took him aside after and I said, "You're just missing the most important coaching opportunity of your life by making them make that choice. Because if they try their very, very best to win, they're going to have the most fun. And then they may not win sometimes, but that's a teaching moment too." In fact, I saw Martin St. Louis yesterday after the Canadians won
Yeah.
saying, we knew, we're going to win, we're going to lose, something's going to happen. It's not predestined, but every moment's a learning moment as we grow. And so you hope you win, you try your best to win, but there's a learning aspect there too. And so did you? I love it. You said something, Bora, about you love all the kids or how you said it. And I remember asking. You hear people sometimes say, "Well, I can't have another kid. How are we going to love them all?" Type of thing. We're going to have to split the love, but it becomes bigger type of deal. And whether so what do you do when someone says, "Well, which kid is your favorite?"
No
Well,
pressure.
the answer is always our dog,
Oh, dog,
Coco.
that's a good answer.
That one's clear, and everyone agrees that that's the right answer, because nobody greets any of us with the same level of like unconditional joy when we walk through the door as Coco. So no complaints, never a complaint about food or meals or anything like that. Yeah.
I'm with you. I know more dog names on the strand here than I know people names, and they decide if they're going to introduce me to their humans or not. And it works out really kind of well in that sense. And yeah, they're also really good at being present all the time. And we can learn. There's a fellow I know here that he's an older gentleman. He walks his dog, and he told me a while back. He said, He's peed at this spot 1,000 times, and each time it's like the first time for him. It's crazy. Um, but tell me together, you had the others, your other kids are boys, right?
Yep.
So it was two against two, if you will, boys and girls club. Um, what was the dynamic in the Phillips household?
Well, there's a bit of an age difference. So, my oldest son is 24, and he's an adult in the work world and working. I guess 20 something year olds, like he's working really long hours, really hard. Uh, so I'm trying to think of diet. And then the youngest is in high school, going through growth spurt, figuring out his path, hopefully to college, but wherever that brings him. They are very different personalities. They have certain like family values and connections, for example, to their grandparents, my parents who live below us in the apartment below us,
Hmm.
really strong. So certain core family and religious or faith-based, values. But in terms of their likes, their dislikes, their personalities, they're really different.
Well, we talked about diversity, right? You're not supposed to all be the same. You learn from each other. I have three boys also, and two youngest boys are 17 months apart and competing in hockey, competing in everything. But they learned, it was some, partly also obviously from me and their mom, but they learn you can compete and collaborate at the same time. And it's a big topic these days, and where you compete to make each other better, but you collaborate also to make each other. So, was there competition, Sarah, to get attention? Was there competition to be who's going to achieve first? Who's going to get too early yet married first? Who's going to do all this stuff as kids?
I wouldn't say competition, but I think the bar was always higher. Like I'd look at my older brother and the clubs that he would start in high school, and that inspired what I did in high school. Or I mean, it's different. Like we're not so close in age to, and I'm on a girls' team, so I never competed with him in soccer. But when we played family soccer, it was a competitive
Oh,
game, and it
yes.
was very physical. And I definitely felt the competitive spirit then.
Yes.
So I think it's a mix, but mostly the collaboration and more of like what am I inspired by that my brothers are doing that I want to replicate. And there are a lot of examples that I could go more in depth on, where I felt that and I looked to my brothers to see what I should be doing.
Hmm.
How do Daniela? Same deal, same thing?
It's interesting hearing Sarah describe that because go back a generation, and I'm a middle child with two brothers as well.
I noticed.
Although we're much closer in age, I think 12 months apart and then, a year and a half apart. So we were all in high school together compared with my kids who were all experiencing high school at different times. Um, but I would say what is similar is that like all of us are goal driven, have ambition in what I would describe as like a good sense of ambition, a purposeful ambition, a meaningful ambition, and are like really strong about kind of grit and resilience to pursue goals, even though, neither of my brothers is in education. They're not in the same fields directly. So competition, yes, but more about pushing ourselves with our own vision and goals.
Yeah, kind of has to be authentic and real and not pushing, right?
Yeah, that's
I always
right.
found there's a big difference between, pushing and encouraging. And if you notice a kid has an unbelievable gift and you've got to determine how much do you push that youngster to go for it because he or she doesn't necessarily know, because you can push too hard too, and then they get burnt out and don't like it. So it's a big thing, for a parent, and as a single mom, you got a lot of stuff going on at the same time.
In the 2026 year or any of the years that we are now, they're all complex. And certainly as a single parent, you have like different kinds of stresses and challenges. There are times when it would have been really helpful to have like another set of hands or carpooling or but there were also, other times when I didn't have to negotiate a decision or compromise, like it was, my vision and my word. So that's just the situation that I had, and I'm really, really proud that my kids are independent people, are have strong sense of family, and strong sense of giving to community, being part of a giving community.
Yeah, no, that's important. So, Sarah, did you ever run down to your grandparents and suck up to them to get what you want instead of your mom?
That would be effective.
That actually that did happen sometimes with like candy. My grandfather was a
Oh yeah,
huge sweet tooth, so he always had a chocolate stash that I'd steal from.
yeah.
But mostly, I mean, my mom had the word, and then my grandparents were there facilitating and helping out. But like, she's my guardian. She runs the household. So
Well, they do say like blue zones, I don't know if you're familiar with blue zones and things of that nature, community, that having grandparents even live with you or being right nearby is incredibly invaluable to the home, and it makes total sense, obviously. So that's pretty fortunate too, because a lot of times people don't and stuff. So no, go
Yeah,
ahead.
it's incredible to me. I've been really fortunate to travel to Mongolia and India and Egypt and like places that are not kind of your typical like trip to the Caribbean or something like that, or Europe even.
Yeah.
And in many, many cultures, the idea of kind of multi-generational family structure is still really strong. I'm not sure. I think there's a lot we can learn from that. I know
Yeah.
I've benefited from it.
Without a doubt. I did want you brought up Princeton before. So was there any influence you had on Sarah to choose Princeton?
Oh gosh. I mean, Princeton, I'm so grateful and loyal to the orange and black tigers of Princeton, but I also know that the odds of getting into a school like that have only become more challenging. And so, no, I mean, I think that to the extent that when I had a reunion and my kids were younger and they would join and they would see kind of the hoopla and the energy and the fun, maybe that influenced. But no, my older son didn't even apply, wasn't interested. Sarah was interested. So yeah, it's their journey.
Well, I'm glad you're wearing different glasses so that we can figure out who's who and stuff. And so I'm gonna have Sarah hang around for this part. Usually I do it separately, but Sarah shared who have been influencers, in her life. Amazingly, you were one of those. But influencers sometimes come in a second. Sometimes they come over a lifetime.
Yeah.
I shared this with Sarah. My grandfather was a major influence on me, even when I was 5 years old, and I saw he would talk to everybody. And I asked him once, I said, "Zeta, how do you know all these people?" And he said, one day he pointed to a guy, smiled at him, and he came over and became a friend. And someone else saw us smiling, and as a 5-year-old, I remember literally thinking, "Life's going to be easy. All I got to do is smile." And it was
Incredible lesson.
yeah,
Wow.
absolutely. So, can you share, a couple of people that have been influencers, in your life?
Yeah, I mean, top two are going to be my parents for sure. I'm going to skip over them, not because they are clearly my biggest influencers,
Hmm.
but I want to call out if I can. So when my family made the switch from Canada, made the move from Canada to the United States, and I found myself in a public high school where I had not been at the middle school, the feeder schools going in, and I was really lost and just didn't, I wasn't incredibly athletic. I mean, there wasn't an ice skating rink right there. So I wasn't sure how to kind of meet people in high school and how to do that. And little under 5 foot tall, um, Irish Catholic Miss Lillian Caprice was one of the assistant principals at my high school. And I remember I got lost and ended up in her office, and she had cookies in her office. And so that became kind of like a gravity center for me because that was always a draw. And she not only mentored me and She connected me with the head of the student government and the head of this club. And even though I wasn't incredibly athletic, she connected me with the soccer team where I became the manager of the team and like all different things that she found ways, and she did it. She was never direct about it. So I never felt like, I'm her pity case. In fact, she would do it like, oh, she just happened to have the student government president in her office also having cookies. She did it in a way that was so empowering for me and uplifting for me. But only years later did I realize, wow, was she savvy in her strategic moves and her support and caring. So, and there are a lot of teachers that I've had like her. So it's not a surprise to me that I have gone into education because all of the people who've like opened doors for me, or many of them, have been educators.
Yeah, no, thanks for sharing that. That's it's such a big impact on people's whole lives that sometimes we take for granted or don't even notice. The last thing I want to talk about, because we say in LA that we're going to keep them wanting more so we can do a sequel. It's a whole film thing type of deal. But talk to me both about, when Sarah got into Girls into VC and being entrepreneurial, because you weren't necessarily entrepreneurial in different ways. Yes, maybe yes, but not. So both of you talk about, have you talked about what Sarah's done? Sarah, did you think, why am I going into this? Maybe I should have become a teacher or not, or absolutely not. But Danielle, what do you think about the amazing stuff she's doing in that?
I'm blown away. I I mean, I'm it's so like I'm at such a basic level of understanding that she had to explain to me what VC stands for. We have no
Very
connection.
cool. Sounds very cool.
Yes, it does. We've no, it's not like she grew up around it and that this was kind of automatic. And she's forging a path that is so unique and interesting. And the part that doesn't surprise me, this I could see a mile away, is the fact that she's in a position or has positioned herself to kind of like raise and elevate others along with her like that whatever she ends up doing, I know she'll always find herself in that position. But in terms of the ins and outs of VC and founders and funders and angel investors, and I'm learning a whole new language. It's fascinating.
Well, you taught her all the key words there, Sarah. Way to go. It's an interesting scenario, Sarah, because I know even with me, my parents weren't entrepreneurial or anything. My mother was an at-home mom all the time and whatnot. Um, it must have been it's unique because a lot of people say, "Wow, my parents talked about entrepreneurship all the time at the dinner table." But if you don't have that, it's a different scenario. How did you feel about that, and when did it click?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think even though my mom doesn't have the entrepreneurial language or the lingo, whenever I'm making decisions, she's one of my first calls. And part of that is like when you're making decisions on your own, you need a brain trust that has good perspective, has values, that you trust yourself. And almost all of the big decisions through Girls in VC, Daniella Phillips has seen and talked it through with me. So yes, I haven't learned the technical terms, but I've learned how to be a leader and also how to navigate difficult situations that she's had to do in classrooms 20 years ago. So that I would say is like the beautiful part of this journey. For me, the moment where it clicked, my mom has taught me at a young age, like when you find your fire for something, like something that wakes you up in the middle of the night, which unfortunately, like my sleep habits are really bad now because I wake up in the middle of the night thinking about different ideas. Um, and so I saw that. I mean, my mom wakes up at like 3 in the morning to do stuff for school and would go to all the meetings and all the plays of her students. And so I saw that fire that she had. And so applying that to my own career and thinking about different career paths for after college and during college, that was the big lesson that I took.
Yeah, that's fantastic. You can call me at 3 because I'm generally up for 3 or 4 also with some stuff. Well, I mean, last word. Can you share, both of you, can you share what it feels like and why it's important for people, business leaders and others to be leaders who really do care, whatever you're doing? Danielle?
Yeah. Oh, I love that question. I'm going to borrow that question. So, everyone has different beliefs. One of my beliefs is like we get one shot at this. This is, whatever your beliefs are about afterlife, like in this life that we're fortunate enough to have, I want to have the biggest impact, the most positive change possibilities, and to do no harm to kind of the next, generation. And that's way easier said than done. So I like those are the most important things I think about, and that the message that I want to convey to any student I'm working with, any child that I have, any organization that I'm part of.
Any
Yeah.
comments, Sarah?
I love that. And I think the caring, if anything, is a reflection of you and also the optimism you have for the future.
Hmm.
Like the act of even just in a conversation, how are my words going to affect someone else? It reflects the thoughtfulness and the care that you give yourself is what you give to others. And so it's not just about the impact you're having with others, it's also the inner voice that you have. Like that should be a caring voice just as much as it is to your fellow friend or someone you're advising.
Well, you guys are great role models, just in all that, and I'm super privileged and grateful that I've gotten to know you, and I'm inspired because you know you have to care. I agree. You have to care, and you don't. Sometimes you don't even notice the impact, like we talked about earlier, that you're making, but you do, and to be just happy about that. So thanks for being leaders who care. Thanks for being who you are. Thanks for being Canadian and maybe half Canadian or something. I don't know. And hockey fans to start watching the playoffs and cheer for the right team. And I super look forward to meeting you guys in person.
Right back at you. Thank you so much, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.